There's a part of Europe that looks completely out of place on the map, a small piece of land on the Baltic Sea surrounded by Poland and Lithuania, separated from the rest of Russia by hundreds of miles, and yet it still belongs to Russia, which raises an obvious question: how does a country end up owning territory that isn't even connected to it? The answer goes back to the end of World War II, when the map of Europe was being redrawn and borders were shifting dramatically, because before this region was Russian, it was actually part of Germany, known as East Prussia, and its main city, Königsberg, had been a major cultural and political center for centuries. But after Germany's defeat, the Allied powers divided up its territory, and the Soviet Union took control of this northern section, eventually renaming the city Kaliningrad and integrating the region into its territory. At the time, this didn't seem unusual because the Soviet Union controlled much of Eastern Europe, including the land that connected Kaliningrad to the rest of its territory, so it wasn't isolated the way it is today. But that changed when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and countries like Lithuania became independent, suddenly cutting Kaliningrad off from mainland Russia and turning it into what's known as an exclave, a piece of a country that is completely separated from it by other nations. And this is where things get more interesting, because despite being geographically isolated, Kaliningrad didn't lose its importance. In fact, it became even more strategically valuable. Positioned right between NATO countries and along the Baltic Sea, it gives Russia a forward presence in Europe, allowing it to station military forces, monitor activity in the region, and project power much closer to Western Europe than it otherwise could. This makes it a sensitive area, especially during periods of tension, because any conflict involving Kaliningrad wouldn't just affect Russia. It would involve multiple neighboring countries almost immediately. At the same time, its isolation also creates challenges, because everything from supplies to transportation has to pass through or around other countries, making it more complicated to support compared to territories connected directly to the mainland.